The clash of steel against steel echoed through the royal courtyard as Princess Diana Ashford deftly parried the attack from her sword master, her practiced blade whistling through the crisp autumn air of 1853. Even in a heavy training gown modified for movement, she moved with precision that would make any soldier of the British Empire proud. "Excellent form, Your Highness," Sir William commended, lowering his weapon. "Though I fear your father would have my head if he knew what I was teaching his daughter." Diana wiped perspiration from her brow, her chestnut hair falling loose from its careful arrangement. "What father doesn't know won't hurt him. Besides, a princess should know how to defend herself, especially in these uncertain times." The uncertainty she spoke of hung over London like the perpetual fog that clung to the Thames. Emperor Nicholas III's forces had solidified control over most of continental Europe, and Britain's royal family watched with growing unease as the Russian Empire's influence spread westward. The Crimean conflict was brewing, and tensions were mounting across Europe. At 22, Princess Diana was the Emperor's diplomatic trump card, beautiful, educated, and unwed. A potential alliance through marriage that her father, King Edward, had dangled before various friendly nations for years without committing. Diana knew her time as a free woman was running short. "That will be all for today," Diana said, handing her practiced sword to a waiting attendant. "Thank you, Sir William." As she made her way back to her chambers in Buckingham Palace, her lady-in-waiting, Margaret, rushed toward her with wide eyes. "Your Highness! The King requests your immediate presence in the stateroom. The Russian delegation has arrived early." Diana's stomach tightened. "The Russians? They weren't expected until next week. It seems Emperor Nicholas has accelerated his plans. The King is displeased." Diana quickened her pace. "Have my blue silk gown prepared. The one with the silver embroidery. And fetch my mother's sapphire set." Within the hour, Diana stood beside her father's throne, adorned in royal finery that masked her racing heart. The Russian delegation entered with military precision, their uniforms laden with medals and decorations. At their center walked a man Diana recognized immediately from diplomatic portraits: Grand Duke Mikhail Romanov, nephew to the Emperor and rumored to be seeking a bride. King Edward's knuckles whitened on the arms of his throne. "Grand Duke, we did not expect your party until the 19th. The Grand Duke bowed with practiced grace. "Your Majesty, the Emperor sends his regards and apologies for the change in schedule. Favorable winds hastened our journey." Diana knew better. This was a power play arrive unexpectedly, catch the court unprepared, assess their true readiness rather than their rehearsed presentation. The King gestured to Diana. "My daughter, Princess Diana." As Diana curtsied, she caught something unexpected in the Grand Duke's expression, not the usual appraising look of a man assessing potential property, but something more calculated. Something that chilled her. "The pleasure is mine, Princess," he said, his English impeccable. "Your beauty is not exaggerated in the reports that reached St. Petersburg." Later that evening, as Diana prepared for the hastily arranged welcome banquet, Margaret helped lace her corset. "They say the Grand Duke has the Emperor's ear," Margaret whispered, "and that he's here to secure your hand before the Austrians can make an offer." Diana stared at her reflection. "My hand isn't father's to give to Russia. Not while they threaten our allies." "Your Highness," Margaret's voice dropped even lower, "there's something else. A messenger delivered this while you were with the King." She pressed a small folded paper into Diana's palm. Diana opened it carefully, finding only a few lines in an unfamiliar hand. "The falcon watches the dove's cage. Look to the servant with the scar when you need to fly. Britain must not fall." "Who brought this?" Diana demanded. "A boy from the city. He vanished before the guards could question him." Diana burned the note in her candle flame, watching the mysterious warning turn to ash. "Say nothing of this to anyone." The banquet was a masterpiece of British diplomatic pageantry. Diana played her role flawlessly, conversing in French with the Russian diplomats, laughing at the right moments, revealing nothing of her thoughts. She observed the Grand Duke closely, noting how his eyes constantly surveyed the room, how he drank sparingly while encouraging others to indulge. It was during the third course that Diana noticed him, a servant with a thin scar running from temple to jaw on the left side of his face. Unlike the other palace servants, his movements were too precise, his posture too aware. When he poured wine near her, she detected no scent of perfume or cologne that most servants wore to mask the smells of downstairs work. Their eyes met briefly. His were gray, alert, and definitely not those of a career servant. After the banquet, Diana feigned a headache and retired early, dismissing even Margaret once she was in her nightgown. She waited in darkness by her window, watching the palace gardens below. Shortly after midnight, she saw movement, the scarred servant crossing the grounds toward the maze. Diana slipped into a plain dress and soft-soled shoes she kept hidden for occasions when she needed to move through the palace undetected. The secret passages of Buckingham were well known to her. She had explored them since childhood. Within minutes, she emerged into the cool night air of the gardens. Following at a distance, she tracked the man to the center of the hedge maze, where he stood waiting beside the marble fountain. Diana stepped into the clearing, her hand on the small dagger she kept concealed in her sleeve. "You're either very brave or very foolish, Your Highness," the man said without turning. "I could say the same of you," Diana replied steadily. "Who are you, and what do you want?" He turned then, and in the moonlight Diana could see he was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 25 or 26. The scar was real, but now that she looked closely, his servant's clothing didn't quite fit his frame. "My name is Alexander Edwards. I serve the crown, though not in ways your father would approve." "A spy?" Diana asked bluntly. Alexander smiled slightly. "An intelligence officer for the Foreign Office. And you, Princess, are in grave danger." "From the Russians?" "Tell me something I don't know." "The Grand Duke isn't here to court you," Alexander said. "He's here to abduct you." Diana felt the blood drain from her face. "That's absurd. Even Nicholas wouldn't dare such an insult." "Not Nicholas. The Grand Duke operates with partial independence. We've intercepted communications suggesting he plans to take you to Russia as leverage against your father. Once there, you would be forced to marry him, giving the Romanovs a claim to the British throne." Diana's mind raced. "When?" "Within the week. They're waiting for a Russian frigate to position itself off the coast. You'll be secretly transported at night." "Why tell me? Why not inform my father?" Alexander's expression darkened. "Because we believe there are traitors within the palace who've been paid to assist. Until we identify them, we can't risk alerting anyone in official channels." Diana paced the small clearing. "What do you propose?" "For now, vigilance. I've positioned loyal men around the palace. Play along with the Duke's courtship, but never be alone with him. And keep this with you." He handed her a small silver whistle on a chain. "It makes almost no sound to human ears, but my men are watching with trained dogs that will hear it and come to your aid." Diana studied the man before her. He didn't carry himself like any intelligence officer she'd imagined. "You're not telling me everything, Mr. Edwards." A flash of respect crossed his features. "No, I'm not. But for now, that's all you need to know, Your Highness." "Diana," she said impulsively, "if we're to be conspirators, you might as well use my name when we're alone." The corner of his mouth twitched. "That would be improper. And meeting a princess in a maze at midnight isn't?" For the first time, he smiled genuinely. "Fair point. Diana." Over the next 3 days, Diana observed the Russian delegation with new awareness. The Grand Duke was persistent in his attentions, constantly engineering situations where they might be alone. She countered with equal skill, ensuring her ladies or British officers were always present. Each night, she met Alexander in the maze, where he updated her on his investigation. On the third night, he arrived with a grim expression. "We've identified one traitor, Lord Pembroke, your father's master of horse. He's been paid handsomely to ensure specific palace guards are posted the night of your planned abduction." Diana felt sick. "Henry Pembroke? He's been with our family for 15 years. Gambling debts make men desperate. But there's worse news. The Russian frigate has been sighted earlier than expected." We believe they'll make their attempt tomorrow night. Then we must tell my father now. Alexander shook his head. We still haven't identified all the conspirators. If we move too soon, they'll simply change plans and try again later. What do you suggest? A trap. Let them believe their plan is proceeding, but be ready. Diana considered this. No. I have a better idea. I'm listening. We let them take me. Alexander's expression hardened. Absolutely not. Listen to me, Diana insisted. If I appear to be abducted, I can identify all the conspirators involved. You and your men can follow, catch them in the act, and we'll have proof to present to my father, proof that can't be denied or buried by Russian diplomats claiming misunderstanding. It's too dangerous. I'm not some helpless damsel, Mr. Edwards. Alexander, he corrected automatically. Alexander, she acknowledged with a nod. I've been trained in swordplay since I was 12. I can defend myself if necessary. Against professional soldiers? I won't need to. Your men will be close behind, won't they? She stepped closer to him. This may be our only chance to expose the full conspiracy and prevent a diplomatic incident that could push us closer to war. Alexander studied her face in the moonlight. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met, or the most reckless. Perhaps both. Diana smiled. Now let's plan this properly. The following evening, Diana attended a concert in the palace where the Grand Duke sat beside her. During the performance, she carefully played her part, showing slightly more warmth toward him, appearing to drink more champagne than she actually consumed, and dropping hints about her discontentment with her father's restrictive rules. As she retired for the evening, she gave Margaret explicit instructions. I'm exhausted and don't wish to be disturbed until morning, no matter what. Is that clear? Yes, Your Highness, Margaret curtsied. In her chambers, Diana changed into practical clothing, a dark riding habit, divided skirts, and sturdy boots, all concealed under her nightgown. She placed a few pillows under her bedcovers to suggest a sleeping form, then positioned herself in the alcove behind her dressing screen, the silver whistle around her neck and a dagger strapped to her thigh. Shortly after 2 in the morning, she heard the soft click of her door opening. Through a gap in the screen, she watched as 2 men in Russian military uniforms entered, followed by the Grand Duke himself and Lord Pembroke. Quickly, Pembroke whispered. The guard change is in 20 minutes. The Grand Duke approached Diana's bed. Remember, not a mark on her. The Emperor wants her unharmed. One soldier pulled back the covers, revealing the pillow deception. She's gone, he hissed in Russian accented English. The Grand Duke spun toward Pembroke. You said she would be here. She was. I saw her retire myself. Diana stepped out from behind the screen. Looking for me, gentlemen? The room froze. The Grand Duke recovered first, his shock melting into a calculated smile. Princess. It seems we've been caught in an awkward situation. Awkward? I'd call attempting to abduct a royal princess rather more than awkward, Your Grace. Abduct? No, my dear. We were merely concerned for your safety. We received intelligence that there might be an attempt on your life tonight. Diana laughed coldly. Save your lies for the king's inquiry, Duke Mikhail. Pembroke's face had gone ashen. Your Highness, I can explain. Silence, traitor, the Duke snapped. He turned to his soldiers. Take her. We'll sort this out later. As the men moved toward her, Diana backed toward the window. I wouldn't do that if I were you. And why not? The Duke asked. Because I'm not alone. Diana raised the whistle to her lips and blew. Nothing happened for several seconds. The Duke smirked. It seems your rescue isn't coming, Princess. Then, from below, came the sound of dogs barking, followed by shouts and running footsteps in the corridor outside. The Duke cursed in Russian. Take her now! One soldier lunged for Diana, but she was ready. She sidestepped, using his momentum to send him crashing into her dressing table. The second man drew a pistol, but Diana kicked over a heavy chair, forcing him to dodge. In that moment, the door burst open, and Alexander led a team of armed men into the chamber. "Royal intelligence! Weapons down!" he commanded. What followed was brief but violent. The Russian soldiers fought, while the Duke attempted to flee through a servant's door. Diana herself tackled Lord Pembroke as he tried to escape, sending them both tumbling to the floor. Within minutes the conspirators were subdued. Alexander personally handcuffed the Grand Duke, who glared at Diana with undisguised hatred. "You've made a terrible mistake," the Duke spat. "The Emperor will not stand for this insult." "The insult, Your Grace," Diana replied coldly, "was plotting to kidnap a princess of the blood from her own bedchamber. I suspect Emperor Nicholas will be most disturbed to learn of your unauthorized initiative." As palace guards secured the prisoners, Alexander approached Diana. "Are you hurt?" "No," she said, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. "Though I admit, I feared for a moment your men wouldn't come. I would never have let them take you," he said with quiet intensity that made her heart quicken. Before she could respond, King Edward burst into the room, surrounded by his personal guard. "Diana! What in God's name is happening here?" The following days were a diplomatic maelstrom. The Russian embassy disavowed all knowledge of the Duke's plot, claiming he had acted without imperial sanction. Emperor Nicholas himself sent a letter expressing shock and outrage at his nephew's actions, recalling the entire delegation and promising the Duke would face consequences upon his return to Russia. Few believed these protestations, but they provided the necessary diplomatic fiction to avoid an immediate escalation toward war. Lord Pembroke and 3 other conspirators identified during the investigation were charged with treason. Throughout the crisis, Diana found herself working closely with Alexander, who was officially recognized for his service and promoted within the intelligence service. Their meetings, once clandestine, now took place in official capacity as Diana had been asked by her father to assist in strengthening palace security. "We make a good team," she remarked to Alexander one afternoon as they reviewed reports in the palace library. "Indeed we do, Your Highness," he replied formally, too aware of the servants nearby. Diana studied him thoughtfully. In the weeks since the abduction attempt, she had come to admire not just his courage and intelligence, but his principles. Unlike the calculating noblemen who surrounded her father, Alexander spoke honestly and acted with conviction. "Walk with me in the gardens," she suggested. "The walls have too many ears here." In the relative privacy of the palace grounds, Diana spoke freely. "My father is preparing to announce my betrothal to Prince Leopold of Belgium next month." Alexander's expression remained carefully neutral. "A sensible match. Belgium is a key ally against Russian expansion." "Yes, very sensible. Very practical." She stopped by a rose trellis. "And not at all what I want." "What you want?" Alexander chose his words carefully. "What you want may not be possible, Diana." It was the first time he had used her name since the night of the abduction. "Because you're common born and I'm royal?" she challenged. "Because I have nothing to offer a princess except a dangerous life in service to the crown." Diana stepped closer. "You offered me respect when others saw only a political asset. You offered me partnership when others sought to control me. Perhaps that's worth more than titles and land." Alexander's composure slipped. "Don't. Please. Don't say things that can only bring us both pain. I survived a kidnapping plot. I think I can survive a bit of pain." Diana took his hand. "I'm not asking for promises, Alexander. I'm asking if you feel what I feel." His fingers tightened around hers. "You know I do." "Then that's enough for now." As autumn turned to winter, Diana dutifully participated in the preparations for her royal betrothal, while secretly meeting Alexander whenever possible. These weren't romantic trysts, they both maintained propriety but rather honest conversations about politics, philosophy, and increasingly, their impossible situation. In December, Alexander was ordered to Vienna on a critical intelligence mission. The night before his departure, Diana arranged to meet him one last time in their maze. "I'll be gone at least 3 months," he told her, snow falling gently around them. "By then, your engagement will be official." Diana pulled her cloak tighter. "Unless it isn't," Alexander frowned. What are you planning? I've spoken to my brother, Prince James. He understands. More than I expected. He's agreed to help me petition father to delay the Belgian match. On what grounds? On the grounds that after the abduction attempt, sending me to a continental court might be dangerous. James suggested I could serve the crown better by undertaking diplomatic missions to our colonies, specifically Canada. Alexander's eyes widened. And your father agreed to this? Not yet. But with tensions rising in Crimea, he needs James focused on military matters. If James insists, he can't concentrate with worry for his sister's safety abroad. You're as strategic as any general, Alexander said with admiration. But even if you delay the match, eventually the world changes. Empires rise and fall. Alliances shift. Diana took his hands. I'm not giving up, Alexander. I'm simply playing a longer game. He brought her gloved hand to his lips. Then I shall endeavor to stay alive to see how it unfolds. In January 1854, Britain entered the Crimean War alongside France against Russia. Princess Diana's Belgian engagement was indefinitely postponed due to security concerns. Instead, she was sent on a royal tour of British North America, ostensibly to shore up colonial support for the war effort. Her staff for this sensitive diplomatic mission was carefully selected, including one Alexander Edwards, now serving as her intelligence advisor and security liaison. As their ship departed Portsmouth, Diana stood at the rail beside Alexander, watching England recede into the distance. 6 months away from court, she said quietly. 6 months where we'll be judged on our actions rather than our births. Still, we must be careful, Alexander cautioned. Your reputation will be impeccable, Diana assured him. But that doesn't mean we can't use this time to discover if what we feel can withstand reality. And if it does? He asked, his voice barely audible above the sea wind. Diana smiled. Then we'll have a different conversation when we return to London. The Canadian wilderness proved to be the perfect testing ground for their partnership. Far from the strictures of court, Diana and Alexander worked together to navigate the complex politics of the colonies. She handled the public diplomacy, charming governors and indigenous leaders alike, while he managed security and gathered intelligence on Russian activities along the Pacific coast. Their professional relationship earned respect from all who observed them, while their personal feelings deepened in private moments, conversations by campfires, shared books on long journeys, quiet dinners and remote outposts where royal protocol seemed a distant concept. In Montreal, during a particularly harsh February storm, Diana fell ill with pneumonia. For 3 days, Alexander rarely left her side, helping the royal physician and reading to her when fever kept her awake. You should rest, she told him on the 3rd night, her voice weak. I will when you're better, he replied, adjusting her blankets. Why are you doing this? There are nurses. Alexander hesitated, then spoke softly. Because I love you. I've tried not to, but I failed spectacularly at that endeavor. Diana smiled despite her fever. Good. I'd hate to think I was the only one failing. When spring came, they received news that would change everything. The war in Crimea was going poorly for Britain. Diana's father had suffered a heart attack, and while he survived, Prince James had been granted emergency powers as regent. We're being recalled to London immediately, Alexander informed her, holding the telegram. Your brother specifically requests your presence. Diana read concern in his eyes. You think this changes things between us? A prince regent might have different plans for his sister than a king constrained by Parliament. Or he might understand better than most that in times of war, happiness should be seized where found. Diana took the telegram. James and I have always been close. He knows about you, about us. Alexander stared at her. You told the heir to the throne about your feelings for a commoner? I told my brother about the man who saved my life and won my heart. He was surprisingly understanding. They returned to a London much changed by war. The palace was somber, with many courtiers in mourning for sons and husbands lost in Crimea. King Edward, frail but recovering, had withdrawn from public duties. Prince James, now effectively ruling in his father's name, received Diana privately upon her return. "You look well, sister. Canada seems to have agreed with you." James embraced her. "It did. Being useful agreed with me even more." Diana studied her brother's tired face. "The war goes badly? Badly enough that we're considering terms. The Russians have held Sevastopol despite our best efforts." James poured them both a small brandy. "But I didn't summon you home to discuss military strategy." "Why then?" "Because father is dying, Diana. The physicians give him 3 months at most. He's hidden the severity of his condition from everyone but me." Diana sank into a chair. "Does he wish to see me?" "Yes, but first there's something else." James sat across from her. "The Belgian alliance is more crucial than ever. With Russia ascendant, we need every European ally we can secure." Diana's fingers tightened around her glass. "You're saying my engagement will proceed?" "I'm saying it should. But I'm not father." James leaned forward. "Your Mr. Edwards has an impressive record of service. His actions in Canada have not gone unnoticed." "What are you suggesting?" "That perhaps the Princess Royal's security advisor deserves recognition. A knighthood, at minimum. Possibly a minor title if certain lands in Northumberland that have reverted to the crown were granted to him." Diana's heart raced. "James, are you saying—" "I'm saying that while a princess cannot marry a commoner without sacrificing her position, she might marry a newly minted baronet who has distinguished himself in service to the crown." James smiled slightly. "It wouldn't be without precedent, historically speaking. The court would resist. The court answers to me now. And soon enough, to a king who understands that old traditions must sometimes bend to secure loyalty and happiness." James stood. "Nothing can be done until after father passes and a suitable mourning period is observed. But I thought you should know my thoughts on the matter." Diana rose and embraced her brother tightly. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Your Mr. Edwards hasn't agreed to anything, and the path won't be easy." In the months that followed, Diana divided her time between her father's sickbed and her continued diplomatic duties. Alexander, now Sir Alexander, following his knighthood for service in Canada, worked closely with Prince James on intelligence matters related to the ongoing peace negotiations. Diana and Alexander maintained proper distance in public, their feelings expressed only in formal correspondence and brief, private conversations. It was during one such moment, in the palace rose garden, that Diana finally spoke of her brother's suggestion. "He believes it could work, Alexander." "Not immediately, but in time." Alexander walked beside her, hands clasped behind his back. "A royal princess and a newly minted knight with no fortune? The court would never accept it. The court accepts what the crown demands it accept." Diana stopped by a white rose bush. "Unless you don't want this path." Alexander turned to her, his expression pained. "Diana, I want nothing more than to be with you. But I fear what it would cost you. The criticism you would face, the reduction in status. Do you imagine I care about any of that?" Diana challenged. "I've watched my father die slowly, constrained by tradition and duty until he could barely breathe without permission. I've seen my mother live a life of perfect misery in perfect royal splendor. And yet you've always served the crown faithfully. Because I believe in what Britain can be, not what it has been. I believe we can create something better just as we did in Canada, working as partners." Alexander took her hands, protocol forgotten. "If you're certain, then I am yours. In whatever capacity you'll have me, for as long as you'll have me." "I was thinking forever might be a good start," Diana replied with a smile. King Edward died peacefully in October 1854, with Diana at his bedside. His last words to her were a blessing and an apology for the marriage he had tried to arrange, and for not recognizing sooner the strength of will she had inherited from him. The nation entered mourning, and the war in Crimea ground toward its inevitable diplomatic conclusion. Diana, as the new King James's sister, took on increased ceremonial duties while maintaining a proper distance from Sir Alexander in public. But in private correspondence authorized by the king, they planned their future. James had made good on his promise, granting Alexander lands and the title of Baron Edwards of Northumberland. It wasn't enough to silence all opposition to their eventual match, but it was a beginning. In the spring of 1855, as Britain signed the peace treaty with Russia, Princess Diana made her first official visit to Alexander's new estate in Northumberland, a small but beautiful property with views of the sea. Officially, she was there to dedicate a veterans' hospital being built on the grounds for soldiers returning from Crimea. Unofficially, she was there to see the home that might one day be partly hers. "It's lovely," she told Alexander as they walked the grounds, accompanied at a discreet distance by her ladies and his staff. "I can see why you've thrown yourself into restoring it. It gives me purpose while we wait," he replied. "The East Wing would make an excellent library for your collection." Diana smiled at the thought. "How much longer do you think we must wait?" "The king suggests another year of mourning, then a quiet announcement. Not a grand royal wedding, but something dignified that acknowledges your status while not inflaming traditionalists." "A year," Diana sighed. "Well, I suppose after everything, I can manage that." As the sun set over the Northumberland coast, Diana and Alexander stood together on the cliff edge, looking out over the North Sea. A chaperone sat reading on a bench some 50 yards away, close enough for propriety, far enough for private words. "When I was a girl," Diana said, "I imagined being forced to marry some foreign prince I'd never met, living in a strange country, serving someone else's interests." "And now?" Alexander asked. "Now I imagine building something new with someone I chose. Someone who sees me as a partner, not a prize." She turned to him. "It won't be easy. There will always be those who disapprove." "Let them," Alexander said with quiet certainty. "We've faced Russian kidnappers, Canadian blizzards, and royal politics. I think we can handle a few disapproving glances at court functions." Diana laughed. "When you put it that way, it does seem rather manageable." As promised, in the spring of 1856, King James announced his sister's engagement to Baron Alexander Edwards of Northumberland, citing his extraordinary service to the crown and personal heroism in protecting the princess during the Russian kidnapping attempt years earlier. Court society was indeed scandalized, foreign diplomats confused, and the common people unexpectedly delighted by the romantic story that gradually emerged in carefully managed newspaper accounts. Their wedding in June was, as planned, modest by royal standards but dignified in execution. Diana wore not the traditional royal regalia but a simple gown of ivory silk, carrying white roses from the maize where they had first formed their unlikely alliance. In his wedding address, King James spoke words that would be recorded in history books and repeated for generations. "Today we witness not just the union of two people, but the birth of a new understanding of what strength truly means. My sister could have married for alliance, for advantage, for empire. Instead, she married for partnership, for respect, for love. In doing so, she has not diminished our royal house but strengthened it, showing that true power lies not in rigid adherence to the past but in the courage to forge a better future." Diana's new title, Her Royal Highness, Princess Diana, Baroness Edwards, reflected her unique position, still royal by birth, but now tied to a man who had earned his nobility through merit rather than inheritance. Their home divided between London, where Diana maintained her royal duties, and Northumberland, where they established a centre for diplomatic training that would eventually educate a generation of British civil servants in new approaches to international relations. In later years, historians would point to their union as a turning point in the modernization of the British monarchy, a small but significant step away from marriages of pure political calculation toward matches that balanced duty with personal compatibility. But on their wedding night, as Diana and Alexander stood on the balcony of their Northumberland estate, watching a summer storm roll in from the sea, such grand historical assessments were far from their minds. "Any regrets?" Alexander asked, his arm around her waist. Diana leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of the man who had begun as her protector, become her confidant, and was now her husband. "Not one," she said, turning to kiss him as the first raindrops fell. "This is exactly where I'm meant to be." And as the princess and the former rebel embraced, The empire that had nearly kept them apart continued its slow transformation into something new, something that might, with time and care, better reflect the partnership they had fought so hard to create.